The religious have no good reason to believe what they believe. They tell themselves comforting stories, but holy crap, this is bad. They would never allow this kind of absurd garbage for anything else that they accept in life, but for their religion, all critical faculties and sensible filters get turned off, and they just believe. What the hell is wrong with these people? Let's find out. Here comes a video from Scott M. Sullivan, a Catholic apologist, who might be one of the worst that we've ever looked at around here, and that's kind of saying something, isn't it? Why are these people like this? Why are these people so absurdly uncritical about their own beliefs? Maybe by the time we get to the end of this, we'll have some answers, but I'm not really holding my breath. Instead, just hold your nose, because he's going to be slinging a whole lot of, well, you know.
In this episode of The Christian Philosopher, we'll look at 10 reasons to think Christianity is true.
And I'm willing to bet that I'm going to disagree on every single one of them. Granted, I'm not looking at them from the perspective of someone who really wants to believe. I don't really want to believe. I just want to know what is factually true to the best of my ability to discover it. And the religious, they don't. They don't care. They just want to believe it. Still, I am willing to give him the benefit of the doubt and see what his 10 reasons are. And you're welcome to come along for the ride. So let's get started.
Welcome back, everyone. Scott Sullivan here from the Aquinas School of Theology and Philosophy. Today we are talking about 10 reasons to think that Christianity is true.
Now, do you mean really true, or do you mean emotionally comforting? What perspective are you starting from? That's important to establish up front, although here, I guess we'll just have to learn as we go, because most apologists, they start with that belief that Christianity is true, that the Bible is reliable, that all the stories actually happened as written, and then they will say, well, because all those things are already so, that's how we know Christianity is true. But that's not how that works, though, is it? You cannot establish fact through faith. And they have no interest whatsoever in actually establishing their faith as factually correct. They just really want to believe it. So we'll keep an eye on that, right?
In a previous video, I made this argument called the MAC, the Master Argument for Christianity, and it runs like this. If Christianity is true, then a lot of good things we want are true.
Well, that's bullshit. That's not how truth works. It's like saying, if gravity is true, then a lot of good things we want are true. Yet, if you fall out of an airplane without a parachute, you're still going to die, most likely since there are a very small percentage of people who might survive it, although they're going to be pretty messed up. The truth of gravity has nothing to do with whether we like the outcomes. It is true because it's true. It is defensible because we have evidence for it. This guy is already showing what a complete idiot he is.
Christianity is true.
Says who? This is what I was talking about before. You can't demonstrate that a proposition is true by assuming that the proposition is true. This is supposed to be an argument for Christianity, but it can't be an argument for Christianity by just asserting that Christianity is true a priori. This guy is a shit philosopher. Why am I not surprised?
Therefore, a lot of these good things we want are true.
Except that's not how anything works. The truth of a proposition has nothing to do with whether you like the results of it. See my previous example of gravity. This is just an appeal to, I'm just an idiot, because that's what it takes to even say something like this. Besides, this just shows how the religious work backwards, something that I've pointed out many times before. They want good things to be true. They are comforted by the idea of Christianity. Therefore, since Christianity must be true, after all, they are comforted by it, so it just has to be, then Christianity has to give them the good things that they want to be true, right? This is starting with the conclusion and working your way back to the premises. It is really, really, really dumb.
Now, in a previous video, I looked at 10 reasons to think that the first premise is true. The first premise is that if Christianity is true, then a lot of good things that we want are also true, okay? And then I looked at 10 reasons to think that. So these are 10 reasons based upon our natural desires. That is, things all human beings want. We all want these things, and if Christianity is true, it would fulfill these natural human desires.
I just let him run on there for a minute, but he's still, yeah. Because again, what you want to be true isn't true simply because you want it to be true. It is true if and only if it is actually true. Truth comes from without, not from within. You don't get to just declare a thing to be true without being able to back it up with independent evidence, and that's exactly what he's trying to do here. Now, we didn't see the last video. I mean, I can go back and check it out if anybody asks nicely, but I'm assuming that this is his evidence for the second part, the Christianity is true bit. But that is so laughable to just state as a premises because it's not actually defensible. It's like trying to demonstrate that Bigfoot is real by including a premise in your argument that Bigfoot is real, therefore Bigfoot is real. It doesn't work that way. So his argument is nonsense up front, and I think we're just going to prove that this particular premise, this specific premise, is just nonsense as well. So let's get on to his list and we'll handle them one by one.
So I'm talking about number one, if Christianity is true, you and your loved ones never really die.
So what? This is also just an appeal to emotion. It's also just nonsense since, according to Christianity, that's really only true for saved Christians. Sure, I guess they could say that you never really die in hell, but if your loved ones are headed down under, and I don't mean Australia, then this is probably not something that Christians are looking forward to. Granted, some do. Some think they're going to be up there in heaven, sitting on a cloud, watching the tortured go on and on and on, and being really happy that it's happening. But those people are assholes, aren't they? It's not something really worthwhile.
Perfect happiness is possible and within your control.
Actually, it's not. If God is real and has all those pesky omni properties, then you have absolutely no control. You can't have free will since God knows absolutely everything that will happen and God can't be wrong. Therefore, you can't do anything that God hasn't foreseen. Thus, free will can't conceivably exist. Free will is defined as the ability to do otherwise. How can you do otherwise when God has perfect foreknowledge of what you're going to do no matter what you do? So, no.
All pain and negative emotions will be eliminated forever.
That's just an assertion. I mean, all of these are just assertions because they can't back any of it up with evidence. But again, this is if Christianity is true. And as we all know, if is not because, like the religious assume that it is. So this is all just nonsense from a rational viewpoint. Granted, he's just recapping his last video, and we're not answering the last video unless somebody really, really, really wants me to. But this is what it was, I'm assuming, so take that into account before you ask. Therefore, I'm just going to fast forward through his recap, and I'll just see you all on the other side.
The only truth is possible. Around you is real. Human dignity is real. God loves you. Your life has a purpose, value, and meaning. The entire created universe is governed by God's providential plan, and you have permanent reason to be happy and optimistic in this world, no matter what happens. Now, of course, the first premise is not trying to show that Christianity is true. Again, it's trying to show that Christianity is good.
By cherry picking only those things that you subjectively think are good, not what you can demonstrate is actually true. Because I don't care about your opinions. I care what you can demonstrate is actually so. And this is just a misuse of philosophy that gets you nowhere but, I really, really like it. Yeah, nobody cares. Again, not talking to us, he's just conning the rubes because those are the only ones who will pay him. So let's keep going into hopefully his defense of the second point.
Showing Christianity is true, that's the purpose of the second premise, and that's the point of this video. Now, what we're going to do here today is build a cumulative case for Christianity. What's that? Well, the nature of a cumulative case is this. Instead of using just one argument to support a conclusion, you use a whole bunch, right?
Because you have no one thing that actually does the job. This is not a good thing. Each individual example does nothing to move the needle on its own, but by just throwing enough shit at the wall that you hope that something sticks, you hope that your gullible audience will think that you've said a lot of really worthwhile stuff, even though you haven't, instead of what's really happened, that you've done nothing at all of substance. Now, of course, I have no idea what he's going to say next, although I can certainly guess. He isn't going to have any actual evidence whatsoever. He, like all the rest, just really wants to believe.
This gives you a stronger case. So, for example, if you're in a court of law, it's nice to have one witness come to your defense, but it's better to have, say, 10, right?
Not necessarily. If those witnesses corroborate each other, sure. But if they're all telling different stories that are mutually exclusive, then no, it just hurts your case. If they're all just telling different stories that have nothing at all to do with each other, or even to do with your defense, then it's completely useless. If you have people standing up and telling the court that you're an angel or that you perform miracles, that's going to do absolutely nothing but hurt you. So that's not really true, at least as stated. But go ahead, continue.
Well, it's the same thing here. When you have multiple arguments combining and converging and pointing to the same conclusion, you have a stronger case. You are more justified in believing that conclusion than if you only had, say, one argument.
Only if the arguments are valid and sound. That's the problem with the religious, though, and to be fair, lots of other people too, because they don't tend to care about the soundness of it. Well, it sounds good to me is about as far as they go. So long as they personally like the idea, they don't tend to look at it too closely, do they? Which is what we're going to do here. Your arguments actually have to be sound and produce demonstrably true conclusions. And those conclusions have to be backed up with evidence. Why do I think none of them are going to?
So this idea is used all the time. For example, if you had one argument to support the theory of evolution, that would be good. But if you had 5 or 6, that would be even better. And it's the same thing here.
Then I guess it's a good thing that we have thousands and thousands of examples that correlate and confirm the others. That's how we know that evolution is actually true. How much you want to bet he'll have nothing even remotely close to that on the Christianity side? Leave your predictions down in the comments because I'd like to see just how many of you think that Scott here has a clue.
So here in this video, we're going to look at 10 reasons to think that Christianity is true. And here are those 10 arguments.
I'll give you a second to read through some of those. If you need more time, feel free to pause. We'll go over them in detail in a minute. Now, keep in mind, he spent more than half of his video on recap and nonsense. So I'm willing to bet that he won't have a lot to say about any of these in detail. He'll just pretend that they've just got to be true because that's what he wants to be true. This guy is a real idiot, but that's not exactly a surprise, is it? So I'll give you a couple seconds to look. Remember, pause if you need more time, and then we'll get on with his claims.
Number one, the argument from the character of Jesus.
You have no evidence that Jesus ever existed. This is no more convincing than the argument from the character of Harry Potter. The only Jesus that you've got is a character in a book of mythology, which is not remotely impressive. Now, granted, he doesn't care about that at all, and if you bothered to look through the list, you're going to see a lot of really dumb ones coming up, but we'll start here and see how it shakes out. You have no argument from the character of Jesus because you can't demonstrate that Jesus existed at all. You can only assert it. You can only say, well, it's not an extraordinary claim, except if you're arguing that Jesus is the son of a god, that is an extraordinary claim, and you can't just assert it. So this is failure number one. Next.
Number two, the argument from messianic prophecy.
Doesn't exist. You cannot present a single demonstrable prophecy that has ever objectively come true. Not one. This is what he wants to be true, not what he can demonstrate actually is. And that's pretty much all he's going to be doing, I'll predict, because he just really wants it to be true. But these aren't matters of faith. They should be a matter of fact and evidence if they have any validity whatsoever. This is why they want to present arguments and not talk about any demonstrable evidence, because every last bit of this is nonsense.
Number three, the argument from the resurrection of Jesus,
which you can't show ever happened. Faith and fee-fees, not facts and evidence. But it's the facts and evidence that matters. But that's why he's not talking to us, remember? He can't convince an actual skeptic from outside of his faith that any of this is remotely true or reasonable. He just really likes the idea. But just liking the idea doesn't make the idea true. That's exactly why they don't want to talk to us, because we actually expect something verifiable. Whereas the dumbasses in the pews, they couldn't care less. They just really want to believe. But that doesn't make any of it true.
Number four, the argument from the peaceful conversion of the world.
What planet are you living on? That didn't happen. Armies of the world carried Christianity on its back. Where violence happened, Christian missionaries weren't far behind, trying to take advantage of the confusion and suffering to push their message on the downtrodden. These are just demonstrably untrue. All you have to do is look at things like the Crusades to see that it happened. The religious just cherry-pick the parts that fit in with their narrative and just ignore the parts that don't. Reality paints a very different picture, though. So, you're wrong. Moving on.
Number five, the argument from the Shroud of Turin,
which was a Middle Ages forgery. That's already been soundly debunked. Now, I don't know if Sullivan is a Catholic. Hold on, let me look. Okay, yes, he is a Catholic. He's the founder of the Aquinas School of Theology and Philosophy, so yeah, that's not really a surprise. He's pushing all the classic Catholic nonsense that has been long since debunked, but they don't care because they've got their church traditions. Actually, if you try to get any of this information from his own website, he's got a push the allow button to continue, and there's no allow button, so it just bombs you out. So he doesn't actually want people to get to the facts, does he? Anyway, I've done videos on the Shroud, and it's just crap, so let's continue.
Number six, the argument from scientifically validated miracles.
I'd love to see his rational justification on that, since no such things exist. No miracles of any kind have ever been validated by anything, much less science. This is just another empty claim by a religious con man, and that's not exactly a surprise to anyone, is it? Now, maybe after we go through all of this, he'll actually present something to justify it, but I'm not holding my breath or anything. As always, though, we'll have to wait and see.
Number seven, the argument from near-death experiences.
All of which can be explained through science and brain chemistry. Nothing supernatural there, and nowhere does Christianity even mention near-death experiences. So how could this conceivably demonstrate that Christianity is true in the first place? This is him just grasping at straws, which seems to be how Christian apologists work most of the time, isn't it? Just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and hope that something sticks. Bank on something appealing to your already believing audience that you can capitalize on. That seems to be all he's doing, right? No real surprises there.
Number 8, the argument from demonic realism.
There are no demonstrable demons. This is getting really stupid. A reason to think Harry Potter is real is that Voldemort exists. Wait, how the hell did you get there? That's the same level of stupid that he's pulling, which again is why he's only talking to the gullible idiots in the pews who also really want this stuff to be true. But that doesn't make any of it true.
Number 9, the argument from Marian apparitions.
Not one of them have ever been demonstrated to exist. None of it ever happened that we can prove. This is an article of faith, not fact. Now, we see this a lot from Catholic apologists, which is why Catholicism is one of the most idiotic beliefs imaginable. Casey Cole, he pulls this crap all the time. He just trots out things that he believes on faith and declares it true because he really wants it to be true. But that doesn't make it true. However, anyone who might need to be convinced that Christianity is true, in the case of this video, those are people who don't already believe that Christianity is true. We are not going to be convinced by any of this. We're just going to laugh at it. This is just terminal stupidity, but the religious, they can't understand what it is that they're doing wrong. Why? Because they just don't care, do they?
And number 10, the argument from Pascal's wager.
This is the one that I picked up on immediately. Anybody who's going to appeal to Pascal's wager is a complete imbecile. Pascal's wager is probably one of the biggest jokes in all of Christian apologetics. I'm shocked that any of them use this anymore, but a lot of them do, don't they? We've debunked it many times before, so I'm not going to do it again, except to say that anybody who takes it remotely seriously, they have just lost any and all rational credibility, period. This guy is a complete laughingstock. I don't know how else to put it.
Now, many of these arguments by themselves are sufficient to warrant Christian belief. So, for example, there have been a lot of intelligent, well-educated people who have come to believe in Jesus just based on the argument from the resurrection, right?
Nope. Now, I'm not saying that people who are otherwise intelligent might not get conned into believing a completely unsupported load of emotional pandering like the resurrection, but that's where compartmentalization comes in. These are people who turn off their rational brains whenever they get to the point where they just want to feel good. If you were to ask any of these people to rationally justify any of this with evidence, they wouldn't be able to do it. It's just an article of faith, right? Faith is not rational. Faith is not intelligent. There is absolutely no position, no matter how absurd, that you couldn't hold on faith. Invisible, intangible, universe-creating pixies. Faith. Why not? Faith is the excuse that people give themselves for believing in things for which they lack any substantive corroboratory evidence. They have no reason to accept this except feelings. But feelings don't get you to the truth. Feelings, used uncritically, just make you look like an idiot. Stop being an idiot. It doesn't impress anybody with a brain.
The resurrection of Jesus is true. Jesus rose from the dead. Therefore, Christianity is true.
You haven't demonstrated any of that. Voldemort is real. Harry Potter is the chosen one. Therefore, Hogwarts exists. Do you understand just how stupid you sound? Probably not, because fanatics like this guy, they lack the capacity to step back and evaluate their beliefs rationally and intelligently. Believing a thing is true doesn't make that thing true. This guy is making Daniel King look like a genius.
And that's a reasonable position to take. But here again, we're building a cumulative case. We're taking multiple arguments and building a stronger case, letting these arguments all combine and converge on the same conclusion.
Yet all of the arguments presented are garbage. Seriously, go stand in front of a skeptics convention and try this. You'll get laughed off the stage. They are not going to accept your say-so, and they shouldn't. Nobody should. Yet that's why he's pandering to the existing believers, right? Because he knows they don't have a brain in their head when it comes to their religious beliefs. They're just desperate for comfort, and he can just rattle off a bunch of emotionally comforting diatribes, and they'll just buy into it because they really want to believe. That's why the religious are such ludicrous jokes, because they don't care if what they believe is true.
Just so you know, there have been entire books written on each one of these arguments. You can go into so much detail just on every single one. I'm not going to do that here. In this series of videos, I'm just going to kind of summarize the basic idea, and you can go into further depth and study on these things as you see fit.
In other words, buy my books. And he's written a fair number. Of course, that's only from people who already believe it like he does. He'd never recommend the non-religious books that look at the actual evidence, or complete lack thereof, for these claims, would he? These claims have all been taken apart completely, and he couldn't handle his followers going out, finding the truth, and then coming back and asking a lot of really difficult questions. Because he doesn't want to answer questions. He just wants to believe and, scam the gullible. And that was it. After that, he spends about a minute shilling for his channel and his books and all that kind of stuff, and yeah, we're not going to sit through that. He has completely failed to justify any of his points. He just wants to think that they are, in fact, true. And I'm sorry, but he's just wrong. Not one thing that he said in this video can be backed up with anything but faith and fifis, and those are completely empty. This guy is a moron, perhaps one of the worst that I've personally seen in a long time, and I see a lot of really dumb theists every single day. And I am serious when I say that the Catholics are at the top of the list of really, really stupid belief systems. They aren't even really trying to justify any of it. It's true because they say it's true, just because they want it to be true, so it's true. So there. That's Catholic theology for you, and it is embarrassing. So with all that out of the way, what do you think? Give me your thoughts in the comments. And before you do, I retract my question about doing more of this idiot's videos because we've seen them now, and pass. I'm not doing them. At least not if this is the kind of content that we can expect. It's really hard to say that some apologists are just too stupid to even look at. But in this case, yeah, that's the truth. It took us 20-ish videos to decide that Daniel King was too dumb to bother with. But Scott M. Sullivan, it took one. Just one. Why are these people such clear and obvious morons? Let me know that down in the comments too if you think you know, because I'm really curious. What the hell happened to these people? Did they get dropped on their heads repeatedly as children? What could have caused this guy to be this dumb? I don't know, you tell me.